5 military planes took off on a routine training mission. Only 5. But what happened next turned them into one of the greatest mysteries in history. Because within a few hours, every single plane vanished. No crash, no distress signal, no wreckage, nothing. And when a rescue plane was sent to find them, that disappeared too. This is the true story of Flight 19 disappearance, a story that still has no answers. And the deeper you go into it, the more terrifying it becomes. It was December 5th, 1945. World War II had just ended. The world was slowly returning to normal. And for the U.S. Navy, training missions like this were routine, simple, controlled, safe. 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers prepared for takeoff from a naval air station in Florida. The pilots were not beginners. Most of them were trained, experienced. They had done missions like this before. The plan was simple. Fly east from the coast, drop practice bombs over a designated area, then turn north, then west, and return to base. A triangle route, easy to follow, easy to complete. There was nothing unusual about that day. The weather was clear, the ocean calm. Visibility good, no storms, no warnings. Nothing that could hint at what was about to happen. At around 2:10 p.m., the 5 planes took off. Everything was normal. For the first hour, everything went exactly as planned. The pilots reached the bombing site, completed their exercises, and began preparing for the return flight. But then, something changed. At around 3:40 p.m., one of the pilots radioed in. His voice, confused, uncertain. "Control, we seem to be off course." That was strange. These were trained pilots. They knew the route. Getting lost wasn't impossible, but it wasn't expected. The instructor leading the group, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, was the most experienced among them. If anyone could correct the course, it was him. But then, his voice came through the radio, and what he said made no sense. "I don't know where we are." Pause. "The ocean looks strange." Strange? What does that even mean? The ocean is the ocean, blue, endless, unchanging. But something about it looked wrong. The control tower tried to guide them. "Fly west, you'll reach land." Simple instruction. If they followed it, they would be safe. But Taylor hesitated. He believed he was over the Florida Keys, which meant flying west would take them deeper into the ocean. But that was impossible. They weren't supposed to be there. The navigational instruments were checked, and then came another chilling message. "Our compasses are not working." Now things were getting serious. No compass, no clear position. Just 5 planes, flying over an endless ocean and getting more lost by the minute. The other pilots started to panic. You could hear it in their voices. Confusion, fear, doubt. One of them reportedly said, "If we just fly west, we'll get home." But no one took control. They followed the leader, and the leader was unsure. Time passed. Fuel was running low. The sun was starting to go down. Darkness was approaching, and they were still lost, completely lost. The control tower kept trying. "Turn west, turn west." But the signals became weaker, the voices more distorted. Static filled the air. And then, another message, even more disturbing. "It looks like we're entering white water." White water? There was no storm. No waves reported. Nothing that could explain that, unless what they were seeing wasn't normal. The sky began to darken. Night fell over the ocean, and with it came silence. One by one, the signals faded, the voices disappeared, and then, nothing. Flight 19 was gone. 5 planes, 14 men, vanished just like that. No explosion, no crash signal, no wreckage, no trace. The control tower waited, hoping for a signal, any signal, but none came. So they made a decision. Send a rescue plane, a large aircraft, designed for search and rescue missions. If anyone could find the missing planes, it was them. The rescue plane took off, fully equipped, fully prepared, and within minutes, they reached the search area. But what happened next only made things worse. Because shortly after takeoff, the rescue plane itself sent a signal. And then, it disappeared. No warning, no explanation, no crash report, just gone. Now it wasn't just Flight 19. It was 6 aircraft, lost, without a trace. Search operations continued for days. Ships, Planes, personnel, they covered vast areas of the ocean, looking for anything. Debris, oil, bodies, anything that could explain what happened. But they found nothing, absolutely nothing. It was as if the planes had never existed, as if they had been erased, completely, from the sky, from the ocean, from reality. And that's what made this case so terrifying, because crashes leave evidence, even in the ocean. There are always signs, but here, there was nothing, just silence and questions, endless questions. Some believe this was the moment when a certain location gained its dark reputation, a place where ships and planes vanish, the Bermuda Triangle, a region that has been linked to countless disappearances. But even among all those stories, Flight 19 stands out because of the communication, because of the confusion, because of the fear in their voices. You can hear it, even today, when you read the transcripts. They weren't just lost, they were scared, as if something was wrong, something they couldn't understand, something they couldn't escape. And then they were gone, forever. And just like that, Flight 19 was gone. No final coordinates, no confirmed crash, no wreckage, no bodies, nothing. It was as if the sky itself had swallowed them whole. And what made it even more disturbing was that this wasn't supposed to happen. These weren't inexperienced pilots. They were trained, disciplined. The official investigation began almost immediately. The U.S. Navy needed answers. Families needed answers. The world needed answers. And at first, they believed it was a simple case of navigational error. Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the flight leader, was blamed. It was suggested that he confused the Florida Keys with the Bahamas. But even that explanation felt incomplete, because one mistake should not have caused 5 planes to vanish without a trace. And what about the compasses? That's not human error. That's system failure. And then there was the weather. Officially normal, but reports suggested conditions worsened. Sudden storms, strong winds, high waves. If the planes had run out of fuel in the dark, they could have crashed into rough seas. But even then, something didn't add up, because ocean crashes still leave debris. Search teams covered thousands of miles. Nothing was found. And then, there's the rescue plane, nicknamed the Flying Gas Tank. A nearby ship reported seeing an explosion in the sky. A flash, fire, and then nothing. It was believed that the rescue plane may have exploded mid-air. But even if that explains the rescue plane, it doesn't explain Flight 19, because their disappearance was completely different. Slower, confusing, filled with strange communication. And that brings us back to the most unsettling part. Some believe that this region may not behave like the rest of the world, that in certain moments, under certain conditions, it changes. That space itself can distort. That time can slip. Some suggest that Flight 19 may have encountered a kind of portal, a rift, a temporary opening between places or even between times, a phenomenon that pulled them in and never let them out. No crash, no debris, no trace, because they didn't fall into the ocean. They left it. Others believe in something more grounded, but still terrifying. Military experiments, secret technology. What if something was being tested in that area? Something powerful enough to interfere with aircraft systems. Something that affected their instruments, their perception, their ability to navigate. But no matter which theory you believe, one fact remains unchanged. Flight 19 disappeared. Completely. What is happening out there? Because the ocean is not just water. It's a vast, unexplored world, covering more than 70% of our planet. A place where we have explored less than we have explored space. And somewhere in that place, Flight 19 vanished. No closure, no final answer. Just silence. And maybe that's what makes this story so powerful, because it doesn't end. There is no conclusion, just a moment in time when 5 planes flew into the sky and never came back. So the next time you look at the ocean, remember this. There are places in this world where things don't behave the way they should. Places where people disappear, not with a crash, not with a warning, but with confusion, fear, and silence. Ask yourself this: what would you have done? Would it have made any difference? Because sometimes, when something decides to take you, there is no escape. And Flight 19 might be proof of that.